Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Mark Sebastian, Chief Operating Officer at Option Pit, to discuss volatility levels to watch on the Nasdaq-100. And we also have quad witching on Friday this week. So it should be a lot of fireworks, Mark. And not even that, but we have Apple's important day tomorrow. And we know the outsized impact that the mega caps have, like in Apple, on the Nasdaq-100 index.
Yeah, absolutely. And Apple's in a really interesting spot. They have this event tomorrow versus kind of all the negative news coming out of China. It's kind of in a no man's land from a stock perspective right now. So we're watching to see if it can break back above its 50-day moving average or if it takes out the lows. That'll have some pretty interesting ramifications for the Nasdaq 100 as a whole because Apple's such a big piece of it. So, today the Nasdaq's being pulled higher by big moves in Tesla, strength in Meta, strength in Amazon, and Microsoft. But really, Apple not having a strong day and actually briefly going red has really stopped it from having an even bigger day. But generally today, so far, the sentiment is pretty bullish across across the sector. When Tesla starts going, it tends to rip for a while. So it's up $25 today. Money seems to be flowing out of kind of chips, names like AMD and NVIDIA, and into Tesla and Amazon. That's really been a big theme. Is money doesn't tend to leave the market, but it rotates constantly. That's why indexes have been in such a really tight range, but we've seen these big moves in individual equities.
And let's talk about VolQ, the volatility index on the Nasdaq-100. We know we're coming into quad witching on Friday. Does that have an outsized impact on the index, whether it's VolQ you're looking at or VIX or other volatility measures when we come up to quad witch?
Yeah, well, VolQ is trading 1660 right now. That's about as cheap as it can get. This quad witching is going to be a big one. There's a ton of open contracts. I think we could see some pretty big money shifts over the next few days, and then next week leaves a potential hole as all of that gamma, all those options that are expiring, kind of open up the market to kind of move freely. So as cheap as VolQ is, it makes buying options on the Nasdaq 100 or the triple Qs pretty interesting for next week. You don't typically see it stay this low for very long. The last time it got here, it lasted one day and then started to rally again. Let's see if that happens again. But at the money implied volatility for the Nasdaq 100 is about as cheap as it's been in the last 2 years.
Well, we know September tends to be one of the more volatile months, or let's call it down months over the course of the year. Is it playing out as expected? Because you know what, market feels as if volatility levels are somewhat depressed relative to the historical nature of September trade.
Well, absolutely. It almost feels like they got out front of September in August. August saw a lot of volatility and a lot of volume, which is not completely unusual. We see some huge. August is either really slow, which is most of the time, or you get these outsized events. And so we saw some real action in August, and that's led to a little bit of a fizzle in September so far. But I doubt that's going to stick because we have FOMC coming up, CPI, and then, like I said, we've got this kind of hole in volume and flow next week that I think could be really interesting for markets, and we could see movements start to pick up Monday or Tuesday next week.
All right, Mark, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.